But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Greetings, teabaggers and clam slammers, and welcome to HBR News number 158. Falling in love for one Gorillion, killer clowns, and virgin millennials. I'm your host, Brian Martinez, and I am here with my esteemed judgy judges to look at the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Prepare your amygdala because we are going in dry. Now, before we begin, I'm going to ask you to please smash that like button because it really helps us out. And if you haven't subbed, please do so. Finally, be sure to hit the notifications bell so you know when we go live. Notification squad, sound off. Now, let's just dip our ankles in it. Today's polecat panel consists of Hannah Puns Without End Wallen, Dr. When Is That Next Honey Badger Cartoon Coming Out Randomer Cam, and me, the Supreme Doge in charge, back in the sack, and likely still a disappointment to my father. We unfortunately do not have Max Darrett. He is taking a break. He has he's just really busy in his life right now, and so we're just going to be handling it, the three of us. Yeah, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to play that one sound that I had for him. I may save it for when he comes back, because it was my little nickname thing. So I'm just going to leave that out. We'll just have to wait until Max comes back before we find out what that was. All right, so we have a pretty fun show with you guys, packed with lots of little things and some hilarity. So please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat and in the comments section. On this week's HBR News Show, we will be looking at weird clown murder fetishes, rising millennial virginity, $1 million virginity, clam slamming on Overwatch, how to make the cheerleading squad without merit, and other high-quality, totally sane stories about humans and other species. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. Want to make the most egalitarian society ever? Well, Bloomberg has set up a simple quiz that we'll be taking in the after show, just to find out how easy it is to take away women's rights all over again. I mean, to create an egalitarian society where everything is totally equal and nobody is left out or marginalized. Anyway, if you would like to participate in our after shows, either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you don't want to wake up one morning and find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, please go to badgerfeed.com. That is badgerfeed.com. You see it right at the top of your screen. So, those of you guys who are watching, also bear in mind, if you want to be a part of the conversation, send us a super chat. We will be more than happy to read them on the air and try to answer any questions that you guys may have. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and get into the stories because there's quite a few of them and they could be a lot of fun. Well, they're supposed to be. I don't know. I picked them, so, I mean, here's hoping, right? All right, so first story, All or Nothing. Hanover Park High School, located in East Hanover, New Jersey, has been criticized after passing a new rule concerning the cheerleading squad. The new rule stipulates that either everybody who tries out for the squad makes it, or else nobody does. This change came after a parent complained that their child was not allowed on the team, which prompted the athletic director to institute the change in policy. Stephanie Kruger, Hanover Park student and cheerleader, stated, "I tried my hardest. Now everything is going away because of one child who did not make the team. And their parent complained, so now all my hard work has been thrown out the window." Some parents who brought their concerns to the school say that the principal then threatened to dissolve the cheerleading squad entirely. Currently, the school stands by its decision, stating that the goal of the new rule is to be, guess what? What do you think? What do you think the goal is? More inclusive. Close.
Tolerant or diversive or inclusive.
More inclusive. So, So we're about to see the worst cheerleading squad in the country.
Oh, I don't know. I've seen some bad cheerleading squads, and I can say that because I didn't make the cheerleading squad. I think I was a freshman when I tried out. I was my freshman year. I decided I was going to try everything, right? Everything, and that didn't work out because there are some things that were in my area of interest, and there were some things that were not. And we had a gymnast and a girl who had been in dance for, I think, 12 years on our cheerleading squad, and a couple of other athletes. Like, not that cheerleaders aren't athletes to begin with. You try jumping around for the entire time that somebody's playing basketball. A basketball game goes on or a football game goes on, and call it not athletic. But we had like superior athletes on our cheerleading squad at my high school. And I was even less outgoing then than I am now. So nobody could hear my cheer. Like, I was up there and I was making motions and you could see my mouth moving, but nobody could hear a thing. It was a disaster. It was like probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my entire high school career. And I was a little disheartened by it until my best friend at that time was like, "What the hell are you doing trying out for the cheerleading squad for anyway? You'd hate it. This isn't even the kind of thing you like to do. What's wrong with you?" But there was another girl, next year, that tried out that didn't make it, and one of the other girls on the team dropped out so she could be on. This is something that can be left up to the kids to resolve, and it's kind of an insult to all of the kids in the school that the parents got involved in this, that one mom got involved in this and decided failure should be outlawed at that school. You learn from failure sometimes more than you learn from success.
Sure.
Often more than you do.
It's strange. I just want to bring this up before you go on further. My first thought on this when I read this article was, why is it one mother complaining was enough to change the rules, but several other parents that raised concerns was not? It was actually enough to make the principal double down. How many complaints does it take to change the rules? That's the thing.
Depends on how you complain.
Yeah.
If your complaint starts with, "I think this is unfair," and ends with, "I think this is unfair," and you're so mean and stuff like that, it probably ain't going to get anywhere. But if somebody complains with, "My lawyer says," then you might have a principal doubling down. If somebody's complaint fits in with the currently promoted political narrative, then the principal's going to go doubling down on that as well. And would almost bet money on this that both of those things happened. But this is very bad for the kids. This is bad for all of the kids. It's bad for the cheerleaders. It's bad for the kids that wouldn't have made the cheerleading squad. And it's bad for the rest of the kids at the school too, because everybody now learns that failure is outlawed. Not that you are not allowed to fail, but that the world is not allowed to have a way in which you can fail, which is really dangerous for them when they get older and they discover that the rest of the world doesn't give a fuck about their feelings, and there are going to be times when they're going to fall on their asses, and you got to learn to get back up and brush yourself off and move on, and this is not the way to find that out.
So if I'm to get this right, in Hanover Park High School, no matter how bad you are at cheering, you still get to be, no matter how bad you are at leading cheers, let alone cheering, you still get to be a cheerleader. So you could just go out there just in fucking jeans and a t-shirt and fart and just go, "Fuck you," and give everyone the finger. And they'll be like, "Well, we don't have standards on this cheerleading squad. Why would we?"
There were cheerleaders like that in the league of schools that I...
You are correct, sir.
I mean, at what point are you just hiring like some hooligans?
Wasn't that what they did in Waterboy?
I never saw Waterboy.
Oh God, that was a dumb funny movie. But
the
cheerleaders were strippers. They weren't hooligans.
I have a super chat.
Right.
Let me go ahead and read it. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us €5 and says, how many complaints from the Concerned Women for America does it take to change a light bulb? One. One and one white knight.
How many complaints does it take from the Concerned Women of America to change a light bulb? The answer to that is, honey, would you come here and change this light bulb for me?
Yep. All right. Well, I got nothing. I mean, I think that story tells itself is basically how I see it. It tells itself. I can't wait to see how well the cheerleading squad works out. Don't they compete? Like, aren't there like national competitions for cheerleader groups, kind of like there are for
for like bands,
teams?
I guess, for brass bands.
Yeah,
and stuff
there's
like
competitions. There's competition. There's even movies about cheerleading competitions,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's parody movies about. Which I've seen the parody movies. I like the parody movies about the movies about cheerleading competitions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Bring It On with Kirsten Dunst and her.
Yeah,
midriff.
and then there's also the cheerleading squad isn't the only squad that goes out there now. There's the cheerleading squad and the pep squad and the dance team, and they're not all the same. And there's sometimes there's another one, and of course then you have the squad that does cool acrobatic things with the marching band, which might sometimes have overlap with some of the other squads in smaller schools that try to do everything. So,
yeah. All right. Well, good luck, Hanover Park High School, with those competitions and your brand new all-inclusive cheerleading squad. Also,
soccer mom cheerleading squad.
try to get
Jeez.
some traps in there so you have like a little bit more upper body strength on your team. All right.
And don't forget to give everyone a trophy.
Don't forget.
Hey man, they're a private company. They can do what they like as long as they do what I like.
All right. Next story. The 1 million euro virginity. All right. The 20-year-old French female student who sold her virginity in an online auction for 1 million euros, which is about $1.2 million in US money, says she has fallen in love with the man who purchased her. The female, known only as Jasmine, used the website known as Cinderella Escorts to place her virginity up for bid. A bidding war began over her, attracting a DJ from Los Angeles and a real estate mogul from Munich. But it was a Wall Street banker from New York who ultimately placed a winning bid of 1 million euros. Although initially hesitant, Jasmine seems to have no regrets over the situation, stating, quote, "I was a bit nervous, to be honest, but finally I really liked him. He was a real gentleman and looked after me well. She looks forward to what the money can do for her as well as her family, I bet. My virginity means a lot to me, about $1 million in euros. But my family and I have a lot of expenses. These expenses include a house and a car. They're all expensive because, as you know, expenses are expensive. In addition to this, I would like to have the opportunity to travel around the world and to start my own business."
This is something that generally happens to princes in fairy tales, like in Cinderella. That whole thing where the prince is looking for a suitor, and all the eligible women do their best to be a suitor for the prince. And evidently, this is something that any averagely attractive woman could do.
Yeah. It's almost like, you can do that. Like you can. It's worth money. All right.
I want to agree with the Great Outdoors 1979. She does very much look like that Friday chick.
The Friday chick?
The one that sings that horrible song.
Oh,
the Friday song. Oh my
Rebecca
God.
Black.
She looks like Rebecca Black.
Isn't it funny that we still remember her name?
I know. There you go.
Like
Rebecca Black is probably
later.
not listening, but if she is listening and she wants to get famous again, she can sell her virginity if she still has it for what, $1 million in euros.
And how do you prove that you're not? I mean, how does this Jasmine? How do we know she's a virgin? We don't.
Well, there's a test you can do that it's not always definitive, but there's a membrane that can be broken, that if it's not broken, it's almost a guarantee that you're a virgin.
I fell out of a tree, etc. There's loads.
Yeah, then you can't prove that you are. You can't prove that you're not, but you can't prove that you are. You can prove that you are if it's intact. You can't prove that you're a virgin if it's not intact. And yeah, it can be not intact from other things, but that's one thing.
Well, I officially dub her.
Did I say I said outdoors? Didn't I? Great indoors,
Yeah,
1979.
Great indoors, 1979. I officially.
I
dub
looked
her...
away from the screen too soon.
Yeah. Well, if she looks like Rebecca Black, I will officially dub her Rebecca Back because she has it. On the subject. Okay, moving on to the next bit here. Jasmine views the act of.
It's Tuesday.
It is. Jasmine
she was such a poet, man. Do you know Tuesday's the day after Monday? I learned so much from Rebecca Black.
So anyway, she views the act of selling her virginity as liberating, stating, "On the one side, I think it is a part of emancipation. It should not be taboo that women can do what they want with their bodies." She also urges caution to other women thinking about doing the same. "I hope that women don't make this decision too fast." On the subject of her romance with the New York banker, Jasmine states, "I don't want to go into details, but what I can say is that we are going to date each other again. It's too early to talk about love yet. We like each other, and we'll see what will happen in the future. It's currently unknown if another encounter with Jasmine will set the unnamed banker back another 1 million euros or not. I am happy that I was lucky with the man who bought my virginity. He is smart, successful, and I like older men. Maybe we will travel the world together. In addition,
I have to wonder, like, how many times this kind of thing happens. But the only reason it's a story now is because, like, she, against all odds, sort of went, "Oh, I actually kind of like this guy. I'm not going to charge him $1 million for the next fuck," because that's normally what happens if you gather all the men in your vicinity together and you know, get the highest bidder, and presumably it's the traditional thing to kind of just fuck him once and then go, "Thanks, bye." I'm off to build a life with someone else now.
Yeah, a lot of women go out with guys that they're going out with them because they have money, or they're going out with them because they have great jobs, or there's something, you know, prestigious about them, whatever, and they think, well, I just want to be able to say I went out with this rich guy, or this person with this prestigious position, or whatever, at least once. And they sort of prejudge him, like, well, he's going to be boring because the only cool thing about him is he's got a lot of money, or he's going to be boring because the only cool thing about him is he's got this title, you know, or whatever. And it turns out, hey, he happens to be human, you know, just like everybody else. And yeah, then she likes him. But I mean, dating in general is it's not kind of like that, but it's still got that aspect where you find one thing interesting, or a few things interesting about the individual, and then you learn more about them, and you decide whether you have an interest in them romantically or not. On the other hand, I can't help being skeptical here, simply because here's somebody that her first interest in him was his money. And I'm sure he didn't, you know, make any bones about, you know, hey, I have all these things. Hey, I have all these, maybe these properties. I do these things. I travel the world. I do this. I do that. All the things that you've said you're interested in while they were out, you know, while they were dating. I'm sure there's, I'm sure there's an aspect of this to that self-preservation, you know, that I can make a living or have a living just being with this guy. That's a factor in her decision, whether she acknowledges it or not. And I say this as somebody who married someone I was going to have to support because the government was taking all of his income and giving it to an ex-wife. But I mean, this is a fairly common thing. Women look at men as a resource as much as they do as partners when they're dating. And it wouldn't surprise me at all You know, I'm not going to say that something like this can't survive and they can't live happily ever after and all the fairy tale stuff or anything, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if 10 years from now this story comes back and you find out that, you know, she was with him long enough to get alimony and now she's leaving and she wants, you know, $10 million a month or something in support or whatever the equivalent of today's, you know, 30,000 is. Because that will preserve the lifestyle that she's become accustomed to.
Yeah, well, maybe the Wall Street banker thought he was paying for the whole thing up front, and instead of having to pay it, you know, like in installments over time with interest. But we all know that that's not the way it's going to go down.
And it's, you know, it's not that it can never happen. It's not that a woman can't fall in love with a rich guy because of who he is and everything, but I'm never gonna be not skeptical of something like this. Their relationship started about money, and I'm sorry, but I just can't help it. This is the skeptic in me says this is all about money, at least at her end.
Oh well, I mean, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
This got me thinking of you can pretty much play a game with it if you flip the genders. Men out there, any men listening? Oh, well, fertile men, I guess. How much would a woman have to pay you to have sex with you? Once, and here's the kicker, without protection. You have to fuck her without a condom or without anything. How much money would she have to give you for you to agree to that? You see why it's a different question for men, because it's not just about the diseases. If I say it'll take $1 million and she goes, all right, and gives me $1 million and then has my child, and she needs child support, and she happens to know that I have $1 million hanging around. You see, it doesn't matter what number I say. If I say $1 billion, and then she has my child, whoop, that's my $1 billion again. You can't really play this game, can you?
Yep.
What? So, give me a number, Brian. Well, you're married, so you've got an excuse to say no.
Well, I can't give you a number because, you're right.
There is no number. Whatever number it is, however high it is, the woman will have it right back off you if she has your child.
Yep. All right. Let me look at let me finish the article off here. There's just a little bit more here that her quotes. So she says, maybe we'll travel the world together. Then she says, in addition to this, I would like to have the opportunity to travel the world. She's big on traveling the world. I think she just wants to get out of France. I don't know why she would want that. I can't for the life of me think of a reason to leave France, but maybe that's what she wants. And maybe she wants to live in America where the Wall Street banker is at. In addition to this, I would like to have the opportunity to travel around the world and to start my own business. I wonder what kind of business that would be. Now I'm looking...
It's pretty lucky the highest bid wasn't from a Saudi oil baron then, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, hasn't she already done that last bit?
The traveling around the world or starting her own business?
No, starting her own business. I mean, she already made one sale.
Yeah, exactly.
But she can only sell that once, but it's a hefty sale.
Yeah, it's kind of a batch product. You can't really...
Yeah, I don't think she's going to be able to sell that again. We all know who she is, and we know she's no longer a virgin, so... it's not going to go for $1 million. I don't even know if it's going to go for, $100. It's like... I would have thought...
like I said, maybe she wasn't a virgin in the first place. Maybe she's done this before, like a Black Widow thing, but without murdering anyone. She just changed her identity, go to another country, do it all again, sell her virginity to another guy who thinks she's a virgin.
There you go.
True.
I don't know what she looks like. Does anyone know what she looks like?
The girl from Friday.
She's got two cheeks.
Well, you can get plastic surgery these days.
She's got two cheeks. There's underwear on him. That's all I noticed.
That's all I see is ass. All right, so super chats.
That's what she puts in front of the camera though every time. She's like every selfie, the butt is the most prominent thing in the picture.
Well, if you want it, go to Instagram. She will be lost in an ocean of butts.
There you go. But if my butt looked like that, I would probably be doing the same thing. So
now a whole bunch. I can hear the sounds of millions of people on their keyboards looking you up. Hannah Wallen ass. Joey Jojo gives us, oh, I'm sorry, Red Moonblade gives us $5 and says, if cheerleaders is to be all-inclusive, they have to include men. I think that there are male cheerleaders. It's just not, it doesn't tend to be popular with men, though. Joey Jojo gives us $2 and says, she is a beautiful woman, but not worth that much. Well, this is the way capitalism works. She was worth $1 million to someone, as a couple of people, a DJ and a Wall Street banker. So, hey, if he wants to pay $1 million for that, there you go. You now have a cherry and the box it came in. French Honey Badger gives us $2. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I wonder if you can do this on eBay. Do they even have rules against this on eBay?
I think they do.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure you can sell like housekeeping services and stuff like that on eBay. There's other sites where you can do that, but I think on eBay, if you can't ship it, you can't sell it. I may be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that that's what eBay is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have sites that do the equivalent thing, like in countries where prostitution's legal? I have to look into this.
I'm sure
They have sites that do the equivalent thing in countries where prostitute's not legal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do.
The federal government in the United States just took measures to shut that down and make it harder. And it actually poses a threat to sex workers here in the U.S. because that's where they're able to network with each other too and communicate about safety issues and stuff like that. It's a really backward thing. It's something that I think everybody knows my position on this. Just because I'm not interested in doing it doesn't mean I don't think it should be illegal. And this is, people should be able to make their own decisions, what they want to do with their bodies and what they want to do with their money. And if somebody's not forcing somebody else to be involved, then the government should keep its nose out, period.
Mm-hmm. I'm all for that. Okay, so French Honey Badger gives us $2 and says, Wall Street bankers aren't human. Okay. And Capistan has chimed in. Frank Tomeo gives us $3 Canadian, I believe, or Californian. I'm not sure if they have their own currency yet. If I had a vasectomy first, $10. That's the answer Mike's question about how much would you pay, or would you take if you had a vasectomy. French Honey Badger gave
Don't
us
get a
$5.
vasectomy, man. They'll fuck you. A vasectomy will fuck your junk up. Wait for Vagisil or whatever it's called. That stuff. The new stuff.
The new stuff.
Which is on the way.
It shreds up your sperm without letting them like go back into your system. When they go back into your system, it fucks with your immune system. If you get a vasectomy, you'll be at risk of more shit happening to you. Just saying.
All right then, guys, don't tie your tubes. Well, wait.
You can if you want. It's your body. You can do what you like with your body. Just saying.
Be careful. Okay, French Honey Badger / Ancapistan for $5 says, new on eBay, wife in a box for auction. She'll be shipped to your doorstep in under a week. They call that a sex doll.
Yeah.
Just get a doll. Yeah, if you just want to empty your load into something, you don't even have to buy a whole doll. Just, we were born with the tools we need. Do you know that argument against that argument about intelligent design and the banana? Our hands were supposedly made to hold bananas. Yeah. Or the banana was made to be. No, that's not what it is. Our hands are made to hold our dicks. The Great Indoors, 1979 gives us €5.
Then why are the only species that can do that?
Touch ourselves.
Like, there's loads of primates out there with fists and genitals, but they don't have the opposable thumbs for one thing. Is that why we evolved opposable thumbs, so we could wank?
You've never been to the zoo, have you?
Well, they do it in different ways.
Yeah,
if you really, I was gonna say, if you really want to see all kinds of inappropriate things, take a child to the zoo with you, because that's when all the animals choose to do the most inappropriate thing. Like your kid is right there to see it. That's when the lions decide they're gonna fuck. That's when the monkey decides it's gonna masturbate, like facing the audience. That's what the birds are gonna demonstrate the principle of or the laws of inertia by taking a shit while they're flying toward the barrier. That's all of that stuff will happen if you go to the zoo and make sure and have a child there with you to witness all of it and ask you questions about it on the ride home.
Well,
it does make sense though. I mean, humans are the only primate species whose hands are roughly the same size as their dicks. Because what they don't tell you about gorillas and chimps is they have tiny little dicks, even though they got huge, like, knucklehead hands. They can't fit their entire thing in their fist, so it's very frustrating for them.
Yeah, but they can still hit the barrier from several feet away.
And like I've often said, I don't know which is the driving force in evolution: the size of babies' heads, or the size of women's vaginas, or the size of men's dicks. I think the size of babies' heads has been leading the way, but the size of the genitals have been following closely behind.
Yep, there you go.
So what you're saying is when a monkey, a male primate, does it in front of an audience, and scares the shit out of kids, it's like a terrifying bit of nature. But when feminists do it in front of an audience, it's art.
When feminists do it in front of an audience, it's Tuesday.
Actually, it's the same in both cases. The onlookers sort of go, "Oh, they're monkeys and feminists. Just let them do their thing. Just don't pay attention. Just walk on to the next exhibit."
Yeah, it's not terrifying, and the kids are not traumatized. It's just, then the kids are dying of curiosity, and the next thing you know, you're answering all kinds of questions you never thought you'd heard asked. There are things you end up having to explain as a parent that you don't remember ever having considered those ideas as a child, and it's just one of those things. So you don't know how to answer them. You get really challenged when you take a child to the zoo.
Remember when you were a kid, and it sort of the idea that every generation in history has figured sex out like that, like even long before we had language, every generation just figured out if you do this special hug where you insert this thing inside that other thing, then you end up with kids. And to a child, you look at this and think, how the fuck did people figure that out?
Yeah. And we do.
Oh, yes, we do. All right. The Great Indoors, 1979, gives us €5 and says, Renaho is a great service. They'll drop in those Romanian chicks by parachute. You pry open the wooden box, hose them off, and take them to dinner.
Hose them off.
And Capistan.
That bukkake joke.
As long as you take them to dinner. And Capistan gives us $5 and says, I do not understand why people think primates do not have opposable thumbs. Most of them have it. Although they're kind of like in a weird place that I think because they're not quite in the same position that ours are.
The palms of their hands are generally longer, I think, than the palms of human hands. We've got short palms. We've got small hands.
Try wanking without a thumb. Just don't use your thumb. Just sort of palm it. Just keep it next to you. Bind it if you have to with some tape or something, and try having a wank without your thumb. Give it a go. Just try.
But he's right though. They have opposable thumbs. It's just they're in a different position. They're farther back on the hand because the palms are longer, and it does change. Like you can, if you sit there and you look at your hand, you could take, unless you have arthritis, really bad arthritis, you can take your pinky finger and touch the tip of it to your thumb, to the pad of your thumb, and every other finger. Not every primate does that easily, and that's why. Now, some of them are more flexible than others, but the other end of it is, like Doc said, the size of what you're fitting in the palm. It's easier to grip a banana than it is to grip a pencil or a Tootsie Roll.
Their hands are a bit like our feet. If you can imagine trying to grab something with your feet, and like there's a thumb coming out of your heel or something.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to wank with your feet. I think we've diverged a little bit from the stories here.
A little bit, but I am gonna propose that you guys actually try to do that. That's your homework for tonight. We're gonna call it the Chimp Chub Choke Challenge. And if you can,
I will say this: monkeys do that too.
Well, they see and then they do. No, but
in front of children at the zoo.
Okay. The Chimp Chode Choke Challenge.
There you go.
All right. Well, anyway, we're gonna move on to the next story. Thank you, Encapistan, for that biology lesson on monkeys. So, all right, breaking news, guys. This just in: our on the ground badger has just told us another gamer has been teabagged. This is Teabag Gate.
No, the humanity.
During an Overwatch League match between the Philadelphia Fusion and the Shanghai Dragons, oh God, these names are so Asian. Jae-hyuk Karp Lee, pronounced Jae-hyuk, of the Fusion, eliminated Ji-hyun of the Dragons. Controversy arose when Lee then proceeded to repeatedly crouch over the dead body of Chan's character, an act commonly referred to as teabagging, before using a hello emote. Yes, that really happened. Reactions have been mixed so far. The league matches crowd, which was located in Shanghai and undoubtedly consisted mostly of Dragons fans, booed Lee for the act. Corey Plant, writer for Inverse.com, called the act basically in-game sexual assault. Reactions from Overwatch players and other
How is that worse than murder? It's a game about murder, and you're pissed off about sexual assault. I mean, fair enough. If an army guy was caught like killing someone and then teabagging their corpse, you think, okay, it's your job to kill people, not to teabag their corpses. But that's reality. This is a game. None of it's real. The murder's not real, and the fucking teabagging isn't real. And if they were, I'm confused. They've confused me with their bullshit.
If somebody actually did that in a real war zone, they probably would be taking a risk of, like they'd be making themselves vulnerable by still being out in the open where they could be shot. You never know unless you can see in all directions for yards and yards and yards who else is there. But if they did, I think the enemy would be far less upset about that than they would be about the fact that their comrade was killed. I don't know. I think even in real life, this would not be as big of a deal as they're making it in this game.
Come to think of it, if an American soldier teabagged a female citizen of a faraway country, it would probably be headlines, and they'd probably say ban the army. Ban the army is misogynistic. yeah,
it'd be a big deal here, but over there, the fact that the soldier was dead, that it was done to, would probably still be considered a bigger deal. I just cannot see people getting as upset about something like this as about the thing that was done to the individual it happens to prior to the teabagging. They would be more upset about that. This is adding insult to injury, okay? Insult is insult. If it was by itself, nobody would give a shit. Injury sucks. I guess that's just me, maybe. I guess I'd rather be insulted 1,000 times than injured once. Yep. Of course, I'm hard to insult, but still, well, it's just...
You might have to look at the actual clip of this horrible, violent crime against humanity. So I've prepared it on the screen so you can see it for yourself before you jump to any conclusions about how insults are worse than injury. Maybe you have to see it for yourself. So I warn you guys that are watching, if there are any children present or small animals, you might want to put them out of the room. Also, if you have a heart condition or if there are any elderly that can't stand a sight of blood, then you may want to remove them from the area before we play the clip. I just want to make sure that it's safe. Okay, are you guys ready? Is everything clear? Okay, here is the actual crime against humanity, the sexual assault, live on the internet in front of an audience of, I don't know, thousands, hundreds, maybe. Here we go.
One-way ticket back to spawn, and the biggest difference here, honestly, is the resurrections. The resurrections have come in clean and free.
Here it comes.
For Philadelphia, 5 players resurrected for Neptuno. Only a single person brought back to life by altering thus far.
Okay, I can't watch anymore. It's just too painful. So that is and by the way, guys, when a woman does it, because this is actually a female character doing it to another female character, it's not called teabagging. All right, it's called clam slamming. Don't be sexist. It's clam slamming when women do it.
I'm sorry. they're now getting a taste of their own medicine, right? Now somebody's upset at a woman for doing it. That's awesome.
We need to call the clam slam hunters.
Oh, so when a woman does it, when the other player's laying there dying, does that make it a curtain call?
A beef curtain call, yes.
Oh God.
Okay. So yes, that was.
They're not just clam slammers; they're elite female clam slammers.
Yes, elite female. Do they have elite female clams though? I demand a contest. We need to have somebody judge these elite female clams.
Okay, I want to show you guys again in case you missed the violence. I'm going to go back a little bit. I want you to see this again. This is how bad it is. Okay, here we go.
And the biggest difference here, honestly, is the resurrections. The resurrections have come in clean and free for Philadelphia. 5 players resurrected for Neptuno. Only a single person.
Oh, and to a woman on top of that. That's internalized misogyny. I'm sorry, guys. You can go ahead and bring the kids back in. I'll switch it off to something else, so you guys aren't subject to this grossly offensive behavior. So somebody get the Scottish police on this, because something has to be done. Okay. Oh man. All right, I got a super chat from Confused Gynecologist that says, "I don't find humor in any of this."
That's because you're just confused.
Thank you for the €2. Okay.
So do you reckon they're going to ban crouching? There's going to be a movement to ban crouching in games like this.
Jeez. Now, I just want to ask, like, there isn't a single game like this in which the individual doing this is not wearing pants, right? You always have pants on.
Mm-hmm.
So all the other player sees is pants.
It's remarkably difficult to render a scrotum. It's got lots of polygons.
Well, yeah, crotch in general is going to, but I mean that's just it. All the other player sees is pants. This is like they're calling a close up of a section of pants sexual assault, in-game sexual assault, which is and frankly, an in-game sexual assault is impossible because a sexual assault is something that you do that is a violation of the other person's bodily autonomy, and your body is not in the game. Even in virtual reality, your body is not in the game until they develop some sort of VR that's like the I don't know, the VR that was in the Yu-Gi-Oh cartoons where you're in some kind of gel or whatever and it actually affects your body. There is no such thing as an in-game sexual assault. You can't assault something that is not there.
No,
but
for sure.
That's
you're asking a lot, Hannah. I'm sorry. And also, in Overwatch, and I think this is true of most FPSs, if you are killed in competitive combat, the camera actually pulls away from your body, like out of your first-person perspective, and
so it's
upwards.
Like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, it's like your soul is leaving your body, and the other person is crouching over. They may be crouching over your body, but they don't have to be. You can kill someone from far away and then do the crouching from a distance. It's just, it's just like you were saying before. It's adding insult to injury. But remember, guys, when women do it, it's called clam slamming, and it's totally It's just a different animal. Teabagging is rape, I think. Clam slamming
And
is
okay,
just sexual
Joey, I
assault.
watched that like more than 10 years ago, so it's I may be confusing it with a book series that I read also more than 10 years ago. But yeah, there was one thing that I read that was like that, where your body was affected by what took place in virtual reality because you were in a gel that I don't know what it did to you, but it actually impacted your body.
Supernovi says, "Come on and slam, and welcome to the clam."
Oh God.
Oh, thank you so much. It's not a super chat, but I had to read it. All right. So I do have a super chat from Maul Lurk for 50 kronas. That's Donkey Kong coins. Bigger wrongs in primates appear to be driven by increased promiscuity of the females. I was not allowed to send this super chat if I wrote dick, which he wrote, but he spaced out the letters, so it's
Really? Are they not letting you say dick? Wow.
Yeah.
What other words are you not allowed to say? Experiment, folks. I want to know.
Nibbas. I don't think you can say nibbas. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys more of the tweets that went out surrounding this story of terribleness. Rod Brislow from Slasher, at Slasher, wrote, "Whether it's in Overwatch League, other esports, or demoing your game to the press, players teabagging other players in video games is the biggest non-issue so far this year. Some people just aren't fit for competitive gaming." And Thorin, I don't know who that is, wrote, "I love the logic that teabagging someone in a video game is really bad behavior, even though in the same video game, you just shot somebody with a bullet and they died." Hashtag fan logic. Which is something Mike already pointed out. So, now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next story. Girlfriend dresses up as clown and stabs her boyfriend during sex. Yes. This is a real thing. You guys may have seen it making the rounds on the internet.
This totally legitimizes my clown phobia. I'm just saying.
It's funny that you should mention that. A 19-year-old mother, Zoe Adams, had dressed up as a clown and put a pillow over Kieran Bewick's head to make their sexual encounter more exhilarating. Bewick was afraid of clowns and had declined her earlier suggestion to be tied up with tape. The pillow was a compromise. She whispered, "Trust me," to the then 17-year-old Bewick before stabbing him 5 times in the chest, arm, and thigh with a 10-inch knife, collapsing his lung. Earlier in the evening, Adams claimed that she could not remember stabbing her occasional lover, saying the attack was brought on by him kissing her neck. "I did stab him, but I overreacted," she told the court. Thanks for the honesty. Dismissing the evidence found on her mobile phone as a joke. What they found on her phone included an image of a blood-soaked woman with a caption that read, "Murder is like a bag of chips. You just can't stop after just one." And a text message to Bewick, quote, "I don't think about males unless said male is strapped up and being used as a human sacrifice. You should be grateful you're not part of it."
This definitely sounds like the ideal girlfriend.
Yeah. Top yandere or whatever. Bewick said that she had struggled to sleep since the attack, which left him with the injury to his lung and pneumonia. "I have always had a fear of clowns, and Zoe knew this." It's a different Zoe, guys. Just, look at the picture. In his statement to
Not
the
that
court,
the other one isn't also a clown.
Yeah. In his statement to the court, he said, quote, "I struggle with the knowledge that someone I genuinely cared about would do this to me. Just after I got out of the hospital, this thought played in my mind a lot. But having had time to think about it, I am convinced that she planned it. It wasn't personal. She was going to do it to someone, and it just happened to be me. Strangely, that makes it easier to deal with." The judge.
Yeah, when you dress as a clown, it's generally a planned thing. I mean, there's arguments to be made for how someone could grab a kitchen knife in the heat of the moment, but you don't dress as a clown in the heat of the moment. And
Well, if you have a kitchen knife in the bedroom, there might be something wrong with you to begin with.
some people live in one room accommodation.
Yeah, well, there
the
is that.
kitchen
There
is
is
the same
that.
as the bedroom.
That's true. Well,
I'm looking at this on the screen. That picture on the right there. I'm sure she's not an actual pharmacist. That's a pharmacy tech. That's somebody that handles other people's medication for a living.
Yep. I don't know what to tell you. But she is in the laboratory in that picture. That is her.
And she is using the instruments they use to count out pills.
Okay. Well, let me finish this off real
So
quick.
does she go like, oh, you have a fear of gluten, do you? You have an allergy to penicillin, do you? Let me stab you with some penicillin.
Oh, that would work once on me.
Yeah. The judge dismissed Adams' version of events, siding with the now 18-year-old Bewick, and she has been sentenced to 11 years in jail as of last week. So
hopefully nobody there kisses her on the neck.
Yeah. Well, so
she might overreact.
Again, I'm not sure why this is a story. This isn't something that happens as in a pattern, is it? This isn't like a gang of clown women like deciding to do this for ideological reasons. This is a one-off story. So I'm not sure why this is. Yeah, I think it's there just to be sensational. Did you know there were women out there as crazy as this? Yes, I guess I did.
How many women would go to bed with a guy after he says, I want to immobilize you, and dresses your worst fear, and I'm going to bring this knife with me, but not, for anything bad, just to scare you? How many women would do that and find it exhilarating? How many women would put themselves in this position? And how many women could be guilt tripped into it by a guy going, "Oh, you're just misandric. You're just an asshole. You just hate men. You're just assuming I'm going to be dangerous." And how many men could have the things on their phone that this girl had on her phone and could say the things to other people that this guy or that this woman did and not be treated as a creep?
Yeah, it's every now and again you'll come across a sexual partner who likes being choked for no accountable reason. They just get it into their system at some point that getting choked is a very sexually charged thing, and that's a bit weird. I wouldn't blame you for walking away from that. But if you meet someone who has a fetish for choking other people, like this one time I met someone who liked being choked, so I did it, and I really liked it, and now I just really want to choke people because it gets me off. That's even worse.
Yeah.
Much worse.
Well, that's just it. Like, if I was dating and I ran into a guy that was just like this woman, he'd have to spring all of that on me. You couldn't tell me about it any ahead of time. And then I'd go through the wall. You'd have to be plastering up a hole in your wall because I'd be out of there. Especially the minute I saw the clown face. That'd be scarier than the knife.
Yeah, like I don't know. I picked it because it's just really weird. It was just a really weird story. I didn't. A woman dresses up as a clown and stabs her boyfriend. That doesn't happen every day. I just thought it was worth mentioning to people who doesn't know that these sorts of things happen. I thought it was like a fetish thing myself. There are people who are into being cut by clowns. So I mean, maybe I thought maybe she just. Yeah, I'm sure there are. Yeah,
I keep forgetting Rule 34. It's I guess
there absolutely. I used to. Okay, so when I was in my early 20s, I was dating crazy girls, and I dated a girl who was on a website I never heard of because I was a newbie to the internet called FetLife, and on FetLife there's just a bunch of people with various fetishes looking for other people with various fetishes, and she showed me the website because she was fascinated with this world, and everything is on. If you can think of it, it's there, and there are people into it. So I figured, I didn't read the article, but I thought the headline was enough to at least look into, and I thought maybe this guy was into clowns with knives, like he saw it. And was like, dude, that's hot. I want that, but I want a Rule 34 version of it, / whatever the gender swap is. And here we are, realizing that it wasn't quite what he was hoping for, his escapades. It's not a Gian Gomeshi situation. It's different. It's a little bit different from that. So, yeah, Fet Life. And Capistan gives us $2 and says, did she have a license for that kitchen knife? You know, it's funny, that was in the UK, I believe. But I don't know if it was in London. I'm not sure where that law, if they've passed that law yet, the knife ban. But I don't think, I think she may have been breaking the law.
Moved on to potato peelers.
Really?
A guy got arrested, legit arrested, for carrying a potato peeler in a public place. How the fuck do you injure someone with a potato peeler? Answers on a postcard.
Very slowly.
I don't fucking understand.
I don't know. That's like that's like running around with a cheese grater. I think you could hurt someone with it. And I cringe.
You can bash somebody in the head with it if it's one of those big rectangular ones.
Yeah, I have one of those big rectangular cheese graters. I could see how, if I like it was strong enough and I just like ran it across somebody's skin in the opposite direction, that could suck quite a bit. That could hurt. Potato peeler, maybe. I have one of those too. I don't know. And Capistan says Rule 63 is gender swapping. Thank you. I thought it was 63. I wasn't sure. Zanman gives us $10 ARS. What is that? What kind of money is that? ARS. Tell me. Don't cross me or I'll exfoliate your skin. Somebody says. Oh my God. So, yeah. Our Argentinian pesos. Oh, thank you, Zen Man. That's cool. I don't know. Any other thoughts on woman in a clown suit? Here's what I say, guys. If you meet a girl and you're thinking about getting close to her, I don't know, just come up with really good questions to ask, and don't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm not gonna do. I don't want to do any weird shit with you. Like, I don't trust you just yet. Because I think that's kind of how he ended up in that situation. He let her tie him up. And then she stabbed him. So.
And the same goes if you meet a clown. I mean, not all clowns are like that. But,
hashtag not all clowns.
If she says that guys are only good for human sacrifice, that's probably a minor red flag at least.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, be on the lookout of that. All right, so next story. This one came to us by Max, but Max is not here. I believe he is preparing steamed hams for the superintendent, so he's not available. The Next Step project, created by the Department of Education and now managed by University College London, has been tracking 16,000 people born in 1989 and 1990 since they were 14. One element of the project involved determining how long millennials have been waiting to have sex in comparison to their elders. Quote from the article: millennials are waiting longer to have sex, with 1 in 8 still virgins at 26 years old. In typical mainstream media fashion, in determining why this may be, they only present explanations which support their worldview. Quote from the article: Susanna Absey, a psychoanalytic psychotherapist at the Ballant Consultancy, told the Sunday Times, quote, millennials have been brought up in a culture of hypersexuality, which has bred a fear of intimacy. The women...
I want to see this spread across genders. They say 1 in 8 is still a virgin at 26 years old. I want to know how many of them are male. I would guess they're mostly male.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Yep,
I would like to see that too.
You're probably right. And I would probably also bet that there's quite a fair number of them that aren't the least bit afraid of intimacy, but they're probably afraid of getting somebody pregnant, probably afraid of picking up an STD, probably afraid of ending up with a psycho ex-girlfriend that drags them through the bowels of the court system. Mm-hmm. I doubt they're afraid of intimacy itself.
No, I bet it's mostly male, like really high, and I bet what's happening is if there is an increase in, length of time to wait to lose his virginity, it's a combination of men who aren't finding women and women who are waiting for the perfect man, and therefore, like, they have analysis paralysis. Like they're sort of shooting so high for, in terms of what they're looking for, that they're not actually having sex with them, but that's probably a minority of the women who are virgins, and the majority of the virgins are probably men, and they're probably just like, nobody wants me. So,
like, arranged marriages cause problems, right? I think we're all agreed on that. None of us are in favor of a system of arranged marriages because it skews things in the wrong direction. But what's the opposite of that? Is it possible to have a system where you skew it in the opposite direction from that, where people have too much choice and that kind of fucks up their sex lives?
Or they're told by the way,
I'm getting an echo here, Brian, and I think Hannah's getting the same echo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself.
We've been polite about it for a while, but it's starting to grate on me.
Ignoring it. I would say that the opposite wouldn't necessarily be too much choice, but where boundaries are not defined. So you have a situation where promiscuity becomes not just okay, but the norm, and then all of a sudden you're not allowed to have boundaries, and if you do, there's something wrong with you. And we sort of went through that in the late 80s, the 90s, part of the early 2000s was this idea of, if you're not screwing everything that moves, you're a prude, that kind of thing. That might be the opposite of it, where intimacy doesn't necessarily require connection at all, and I think that's just as bad as arranged marriage, in that it sets people up to get hurt over and over again and not understand why. You got to have. You've got to have your boundaries. You've got to be able to determine what they are, define them to yourself, communicate them to other people and enforce them, and expect that others will respect your choice to have those boundaries and your choice to enforce those boundaries. And we have this situation where one sex isn't allowed to do any of that. Guys aren't allowed to say no. They're insulting women if they say no. They're misogynist if they say no. They're and if they say yes, if they have an interest, then they're predatory. So nothing they can do is right. And I think that's kind of where arranged marriage kind of said everybody's going to be in this situation and you're all going to accept it. The opposite here is we've got one gender for whom nothing is acceptable, and the other gender, nothing is unacceptable. Nothing they can do is wrong. Nothing a woman can do is wrong. And if something she does is wrong, it's the guy's fault, and he's the one in the wrong. So there are no rules. Not only are there no rules, there's no safety net. There's no pathway. There's no directions. There's no nothing. You're just basically in a void of doing whatever you want with whoever you want for whatever reason you want or no reason at all, and then wondering why you got hurt.
All right.
I mean, that in and of itself, I would think, would make millennials leery of sex.
Another thing about millennials is they never get bored. At least they certainly have no excuse for getting bored. I mean, even a couple of decades ago, people easily got bored because when there were no TVs in the room. But now everyone's got a device in their pocket that links them to all the information in the world. So it's almost impossible to get bored now. And frivolous sex is one of those things you turn to when you're bored, when there's no information to whet your appetite. Kind of have to fill the void with carnal knowledge. Or hey, maybe we're filling the void of carnal knowledge with information. Maybe that's the weird way around. I suppose. Well, yeah. We're talking about how millennials are weird, aren't we?
There's another thing they haven't considered here. Now that you brought up boredom, this may have to do with security rather than boredom. I think about it. Probably one of the most secure times in my life was when I was in college. I was still able to be dependent on my parents, but I had the freedom of an adult, which is a terrible thing to do to a girl. And that at that point in my life, that is probably the hottest I was ever in my life to trot. Okay, it was when I had no risks at all in my life, really, other than that. and I was at the most secure point in my life, as far as I know where I'm going to be tomorrow. I know where my resources are coming from tomorrow. I know I'm not going to be, tracked down and harmed by anything in the universe tomorrow that is predictable or anything like that. I don't have to worry about anything. And I think a lot of millennials today don't have that level of security, even if they are able to financially depend on their families. The world is so in their faces about how fucked up it is that it is quite likely affecting their reproductive health. I think when you feel as at least for females, at least when you have that level of security, your body says, "Oh, hey, now's the perfect time to have a baby. Let's get sexy," And when you don't have that security, you're more likely to shut down in terms of interest and participation and so on. And I wonder if, although I think that would still more heavily impact guys in terms of there would be more male virgins from that, because women will still sleep with guys they feel secure with. They won't sleep around as much if they don't have that sense of I can depend or rely on somebody. But I think that might have an effect on things as well. Maybe millennials aren't screwing around because their sexuality is impacted. Their in particular, their sex drive is impacted by a lack of security in the world. I mean, the fact that we've had a nuclear war is impending in their faces for a year. The fact that they've grown up in their teenage years in an environment of constantly being told that anything and everything that has to do with sex is rape culture, and they should be afraid of it, and that they're in a situation where their countries are all falling apart, and in particular these are UK teens, right? So they're in a situation that has been rapidly changing for the last 10 years, and I would imagine that has a rather strong impact on one's sex drive in general. And they just may not have the amount of interest in it. It may not be all self-discipline. It may not be all an aversion to, hey, what could happen if I do this? They may not be more cautious or more careful than the previous generation. They may just be less interested.
It could also be, well, first off, Mike, were you going to say anything?
No, I've finished for now, I think. I'm waiting
Okay.
for the inspiration to hit from you guys. Go on.
All right. So a couple of things that kind of I just noticed. One is that it does mention it's just 1 in 8 are still virgins at 26. And another thing is that how would what this study suggests in the article by extension, which is that people are waiting longer to have sex, how do you square that circle when you also have this hookup culture that is supposedly so big with millennials at the same time? And I think it's because they're trying to, so we're looking at 1 in 8 still being virgins at 26, which is probably the high end of the curve that they're looking at, the people who are waiting the longest. But then the other 7 have had sex. So, and then who knows with how many partners, because the study doesn't, at least the article doesn't tell us that information. So I think what we're looking at might be not so much a growing, like maybe by the standards given by the study, or at least by looking at the data, like maybe in a big picture thing, they're seeing that there are people, likely mostly men, who are waiting longer to have sex, but more likely that they're just having a poorer time getting access to sex and intimacy. But at the same time, on the other end, there are people who are hooking up, which is hookup culture that's supposedly going on within the same generation. So I feel like this isn't giving us the whole picture, and it might be a little bit misleading. Because I can't help but shake the idea that we've been talking about hookup culture a lot on this channel with the millennial generation. And now we're talking about millennials waiting too long to have sex. It's sort of like when the nightly news will say 1 minute, you know, caffeine is good for you, and then the next day they'll say, you know, here's why your next cup of coffee could be your last. It's just a bit contradictory, and I don't know. I find it a bit suspicious. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
If you look back at the 70s, you had the hippie culture. You had the, you know, that was a counterculture. That was counter to the existing culture. And like my parents were in college in the at the end of the 60s, and they were teachers by the 70s, which is when it was like during the heyday of all of that. They were in school when Woodstock happened and all that. They were never really into the hippy dippy, you know, try every drug that's available right now and have sex with anything that moves, and different strokes for different folks and free love and all that. That really wasn't their thing. And there were a lot of people who were squares or whatever you would have called them back then that were not hippies, that maybe they were more enlightened in terms of social issues than other people. Maybe, you know, the people had been in the past. Maybe they had progressed forward in terms of it's stupid to be racist, it's stupid to be sexist, it's stupid to fear people because they have a different religious belief or they grew up a different way than you did. But at the same time, they weren't out partying all the time. Every generation has its party culture. The 80s had its party culture. They had all the designer drugs and all that shit. I never tried any of them. I was a nerd. I really didn't give a shit. I wasn't interested in any of that stuff. You know, that's the crowd I ran with didn't even drink. And it was normal in my community for teenagers to drink. So I was out of the ordinary in that term. And this is the, you know, in the 90s, it was the same way. You had the party culture in the 90s, and every generation has this generation's party culture is hookup culture, but it doesn't mean it's what all of the teenagers are doing. It means that there is a segment, a counterculture or whatever within that age group that is doing this stupid thing, and it's the excesses of this generation, and at the same time you look at the numbers. And yeah, 1 in 8 are still virgins at 26. That means 7 out of 8 are no longer virgins by the time they're 26. By the time my generation was 26, I think about a quarter of them were married. Well, most people don't stay married or don't stay virgins after they get married. So how many of these guys got married? How many of these teenagers that once they got into their 20s and they got out of college and everything, how many of them went to college and got their MR degree or their MRS degree and got hooked up permanently, or at least as permanently as this generation is going to do it, and that's why they're no longer virgins. You know, that they're in committed relationships rather than engaging in hookup culture. And then the other thing is, what is 1 in 8 up from? Was it, you know, maybe 1 in 50 before?
Well, that's what I
and
want to know.
And now it's 1 in 8?
Yeah, that's...
Is it a much higher percentage than the previous generation, or not? You know?
Yeah, that's
there's all kinds of information that's left out here.
By the way, the average marriage age of millennials is about 27 for women and 29 for men, which is way up from the 1960s, where the woman's average marriage age was 21 and the man's was 23.
Like, I'm just sort of reflect on what Hannah was saying. Look, like hookup culture in the current century is a bit like flower power in the 60s. Everyone's heard about it and everyone's been given the impression that everyone's doing it. But the reality of the 60s is most people have never heard of flower power. Most people were poor and living, you know, paycheck to paycheck. They didn't know anything about LSD or Jimi Hendrix or any of that shit. And it's, you know, just like in Shakespeare plays, everyone was a nobleman. Reading Shakespeare, you get the impression that everyone in the Renaissance was a king or some other family of rich bastards. But again, this was just the romanticized image of the time that was written about, because there was nothing dramatically interesting about the 99% of the population who just lived in rotten shacks and farmed turnips for a living and yet still starved. And yeah, and again, we think of this generation as the hookup generation, just like we think of the 60s as a time of free love where everyone was fucking everyone. Wrong. Wrong on both counts. The rich, interesting people in movies are fucking each other. Normal people are just having the same issues they always have. They can't get laid, they can't get a job, they can't speak their mind freely, that sort of thing.
Yep, that's a good point. Okay, I guess let me read the super chats and I'll finish off the article because they're getting away from me. So Joey Jojo says, for $5, who needs dating when you have dolls and oxytocin medicine? I may spend my life as an incel, but at least I don't have to worry about touch deprivation. Also, we'll never have to worry about you dressing up as a clown and stabbing anybody with a 10-inch knife. So there you go, ladies. You are safe from Joey, at least as far as that goes. Blave Kaiser gives us $5 and says, but if I'm not a virgin, how can I become a wizard? Also, everyone knows weaponized sex bots are the future. Like sex bots with actual weapons? Because, I mean, London may ban those. Natufian Grain Harvest gives us $10 and says, I don't think it's fear-driven. I just think that millennial women are shutting more millennial men out. We're almost devolving back to a tournament species. That's what I was thinking. Essentially, that millennial women may have, I don't want to call it hypergamy, but it's sort of like, maybe it is a bit like hypergamy run amok, but they're not comparing it to an existing man in front of them, but rather the potential man that feminists and feminism have told them that they deserve that they've never met. And that it could be that, but I don't know. The tournament species thing is an interesting thing to think about. That's what I was thinking about. Mahler,
you mean that potential man who expects to have to do everything for them like they're a child and yet respects them as fellow adults? That potential man?
I'm thinking the potential man being the Wall Street banker with the $1 million for your virginity, like that guy, for everyone. All women should have one of those, essentially. The $1 million guy who wants your virginity. I mean, I don't know what else it could be.
Well, you know, if every woman is going to marry a rich man, the solution to that is eliminate women from the workplace and only men work. And then every woman can marry a guy who has more money than she does.
And even then, like, only a quarter of the men will be rich enough. So we'll just marry all of the women off to a quarter of the men.
Yeah.
And solve all of our problems. Polygamy, it solves everything. Oh, 75% of our men now have no mates at all. And they have nothing to do but blow themselves up. Ah, it's still misogyny or something. Shut up.
They could be.
There you go.
Okay. And Mahler gives us 50 kronas and says, penis, vagina, anus, tits can be sent like this. So he writes it with a space in between each letter and an underscore between each word. But I have found a slew of words that cannot be sent like that, such as faggot, tranny, etc., except that faggot has the vowels replaced by a 4 and a 0, and tranny has the letter A replaced by a number 4. So thank you for that, Maulurk, for the information. We will be sure to let people know not, in fact, to type those words, or at least to try to use leet speak if you want to use mean, bad language.
So if any of you minorities out there were thinking of taking back the word, like black people did with the word nigger, if any of you trannies are thinking of taking back the word tranny, if any of you faggots are thinking of taking back the word faggot, and I mean all of these things affectionately, I'm afraid that's not an option anymore. You're not allowed to take these words back. They don't belong to the people anymore.
You may not discuss transmission repair either. If you do, you have to type out the full word transmission or you'll offend the censors.
Every single time. Until at such time our YouTube overlords decide that people who are using the word transmission in its completeness is actually a dog whistle referring to transgendered folks in a transphobic way, in which case transmission will no longer be accessed. Thank you for your time in addressing this matter.
There's a company in the UK called Mr. Brains who make a product called Mr. Brains Pork Faggots. And I have to wonder how they're going to market themselves on social media now. It's a fucking minefield for them now. How do they even describe their products? Hi, we sell faggots. You're a Nazi, mate. Get out.
Wow.
For anyone who doesn't know, a faggot in Britain is made of pork and suet. It's like a large meatball, a meatball the size of a dumpling. You know.
So I thought a faggot in Britain was a cigarette.
That's just a fag.
No, a fag is a cigarette.
Oh, okay.
A faggot is a foodstuff. It's like it's a burger that's risen like a loaf of bread.
Well, it's also an archaic term for a bundle of wood. But
it's also an older term that means a burden, or maybe it came after that. It's a burden. Is it a burden to eat that thing?
It generally means a bundle. Like a faggot of pork is a bundle of pork. A faggot of sticks is a bundle of sticks, and a faggot of worries is a bundle of worries that you just have on your soul. You know?
Well, kind of makes you wonder how the term got applied to being gay in the first place.
I know how.
Are they all supposed to be high strung or something?
No. The reason why is because I actually know the story of this. This is the reason why faggot is only applied to male homosexuals. The reason is because the word faggot in the context of a gay man means a man who is a burden on society because he's not straight, so he's not doing his due diligence, his duty as a heterosexual man, which is to go and do the tough, risky jobs and marry a woman and produce children. So a man who does not do those things and pay his taxes, exactly. So a man who does not do those things, which I guess was assumed back then that gay men wouldn't because they wouldn't reproduce and make kids, is that they would be considered a burden. So they called them faggots. That's where.
So it's like a dead
weight.
So
it has nothing to do with a bundle of men, such as in an orgy or some such thing.
It's like calling someone a dead weight, or indeed a deadbeat dad. Oh.
Without the dad part, of course.
So, wait. So would a bundle of men be a faggot of faggots?
Yes.
Okay.
It is now.
All right. Well, that was extremely meta, and I love it. So there you go, guys. I hope you learned something. And if I'm wrong, then let me know how wrong I am. And I know you guys don't have a problem doing that in the comments section. Let me go back to the article just to finish it off.
Wait, one thing.
Okay.
Because we have Supernovi says implying gay men can't be daddies. No, the implication was that gay men don't have to be daddies to be called deadbeats.
So there, I was muted. So there. Xeranx gave us $5 just now and said, I have no problems with MGTOW, but are MGTOWs now faggots? Only if they're in a bundle. But, so... It's just about the bundle, guys. Or
a bundle of MGTOW would be especially triggering to feminists.
Or if they're on 4chan, in which case I'm sure there's something for that. All right, so back to the article. In typical mainstream media fashion, in determining why this might be, they only present explanations that support their worldview, as I was saying before. Susanna Absey, a psychoanalytic psychotherapist at the Ballant Consultancy, told the Sunday Times, millennials have been brought up in a culture of hypersexuality, which has bred a fear of intimacy. The women, the women are always up for it with beautiful, hard bodies, and the men have permanent erections. That is daunting to young people. The fear for young men is of being humiliated that they can't live up to it, plus the fear of exposure in your Facebook group. That's a bit of a stretch, but at least she's admitting that this is a problem for men. She says it in so many words. I bet that this study revealed that it's almost all men that are in that position. No pun intended.
It's the first paragraph leads me to think that somebody's been watching too much MTV coverage of spring break.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, the permanent erection thing?
The first paragraph. Yeah, that just leads me to think that somebody's been watching too much MTV coverage of spring break. Which I have seen a little bit of it on and off simply because different times I've been around people that watch that shit. Religiously for some reason, and yeah, that sounds almost exactly at how MTV portrays teenagers' lives in America to the rest of the world. But the other end of it, the Facebook group thing, that actually isn't an unreasonable fear because it used to be. It used to be you go out with a girl and for some reason, whatever, maybe she's an asshole, and she decides you fucked up the date, or maybe you actually did fuck up the date, whatever. But you go out with a girl and she's gonna tell her friends, you know, this or that. She's gonna tell her friends, you were awkward. She's gonna tell her friends you I don't know, kiss like a plunger, you know, or some stupid shit like that. And it's 5 girls hear about it, and they giggle about it in the privacy of somebody's home, and that's as far as it goes. If they're popular, half the school might know. But now somebody makes fun of your date, their date on Facebook, and it's not private, half the world might know. And girls don't seem to have any qualms about, you know, saying nasty things about an ex-boyfriend's dick size on Facebook.
Absolutely.
You know, or some shit like that. That's saying nasty things about the way he smells, saying nasty things about his intelligence or lack thereof.
Yeah, destroy his character so other girls won't date him.
Right. And in fact, where guys have revenge porn, girls have sites like that where they make accusations, they say terrible things about the character of the guy, they say terrible things about his hygiene, they say terrible things about his attractiveness, all kinds of shit. And you don't have any more recourse against that. In fact, you have less recourse now because there are laws against revenge porn, but there are no laws against these other sites, revenge slander. So the fear of being humiliated in your Facebook group is, I would think that's a very real fear for young men. And I would think, you know, a lot of young men would be more cautious around the women in their group, around the girls in their group, and how vulnerable they make themselves to those girls simply because women have no filter in terms of, you know, for the most part, women have no filter in terms of what they say about their exes. They have no filter in terms of, you know, these people have feelings. Maybe I should respect their privacy a little bit. No, they just blab everything, whether it's true or not, whether it's humiliating or not, whether it might cause somebody to commit suicide or not. And it is not the least bit unreasonable at all for a guy to be cautious about how vulnerable he makes himself to a girl on a date.
Yeah, you know, actually, to add on to that, it actually does make sense when I think of it in this way. I remember there was a study done about hookup culture where they were finding that despite the fact that people in the hookup culture were having more sex, they were actually enjoying it. They were personally fulfilled less. And one of the reasons was because hookup culture was treating sex as something that was to be measured and compared, and you know, there was a lot of like people talking about other people, giving them ratings, and you know, it was whenever you had sex with a girl who had sex with some other guy, you felt like you were essentially being put into her sort of, you know, she was ranking you, like, where does he sit, you know. And I think that hookup culture probably makes men feel anxious because when it comes to sex, I think that men are expected to perform more than women are. Men generally are happy if the woman is there. She just has to show up. There are some men that want women to participate, and I think that more men should ask that their women participate if they're going to get intimate with them. But I think a lot of men are just happy that they're having sex. But when women have sex, there is this for whatever reason, it's expected that men have to be the ones that have good sex. So when the sex is over and people go back and they talk to their peers about it, women tend to talk about how good the sex was, because that will determine whether or not the man is somebody they want to have sex with in the future, whereas men are just glad that they had sex. Or they'll comment on natural things that the woman has, like, you know, her assets, as opposed to her ability. So you see what I'm saying? So I think that as a result of that, I think that it does make men anxious, because if they have sex with a woman who's had sex with other men, they will feel like they have to perform. And because it becomes a performative act instead of an intimate one, there's actually less fulfillment and happiness that comes out of it if you're just expected to hook up and then leave.
Yeah. Another thing, sex is like smoking or any other vice or thing that can become a vice, shall we say, in that it has this way of skipping generations. If your parents were sort of conservative prudes who were always sort of pompously triggered by the idea of casual sex or the idea of smoking or whatever, then you'll likely become the kind of person who's very interested in those things because your parents didn't like them. Therefore, they're exotic and titillatingly forbidden. But if your parents are like hippies who smoke all the time and talk at embarrassing length about all the sex they have in front of their children, then their children will find that sort of thing cringy. They'll think of sex and smoking as things that old people do, so they don't do it. And it's not just parents who have this effect. It stands to reason the media can have a similar effect to parents, especially since most children these days spend far more time listening to media than listening to their parents. If the only media you watch and listen to is religiously conservative media telling you to be pure and unsexed paragons of virtue, then you'll likely rebel against that for the same reasons, because it's mysterious, it's morally interesting, because it's not allowed by the ethos you've been given. And conversely, if you're surrounded by media that instead constantly tells you that sex is necessary and hooking up is what it's all about, and you're not a real man if you don't fuck a woman, and even you're not a real woman if you don't fuck around, because that's happening as well. If that's the message you're surrounded by, not just by your parents, but by the media and by all your friends, it's quite possible. Well, maybe not your friends, but if the establishment is telling you that sex is a really good thing and you're a bad person or you're an inferior person if you don't engage in it, then it's likely you'll get a generation, or at least half a generation, or a considerable proportion of a generation that goes, yeah, I'm not buying it. I think there might be more to life than bumping uglies, because I see it everywhere I look and it's getting cringy from where I'm sat. Maybe information is more sexy than bodies, eh? And that'll be handy because there's information everywhere now, eh? Sapiosexual, that's a thing.
The excesses of each generation are abhorrent and cringy to the next. So if a generation is excessively prudish, the next generation knee jerks and becomes excessively promiscuous. And then the following would be excessively prudish again. Nobody ever seems to find their way into the middle and say, hey, we might want to try having a moderate and healthy attitude towards sex and smoking and anything else in terms of the things that get labeled vices and have blue laws written about them. Nope, we got to go one end or the other. Either it's all good or it's all bad. Somewhere down the road, there will be a generation that figures out that maybe if we stop polarizing the issue and stop hugging the excesses, eventually we might hit a point where we can deal with this particular aspect of humanity without tying ourselves in knots.
This is why it's good to have roughly equal measures of liberals and conservatives, because then the whole generation doesn't shift at once. If half the parents are prudes and half the parents are hippies, then they're going to produce the next generation where it's half and half as well. As long as we keep it sort of roughly half and half, it's keep going to just overlapping and stay the same. Like I say, if we all start listening to the media more than we listen to our parents, then yeah, that could start getting an entire generation's periods in cycle, if you will.
All right. I got a couple super chats to get through here, and then I'm going to move on to the final story. All right. So Maul Lurk gives us 20 kronas and says, I can make a bigger list if you wish. Where to send? If you were thinking about sending us a list of approved curse words and profanities, to do it to our email address. I believe it's Honey Badgers Radio. Wait, let me think about that. honeybadgerradio@gmail or badgerrights@gmail, something like that. So I don't know why I don't remember. You know what? Just go to the HBR website. You can email us there. Boom. Or send it to me on Twitter. Zeranx gives us $5 and says, isn't that rating business the very thing that women hated every time guys compared scores, and now they don't realize they do the exact same thing? Well, you know how it goes. It's okay when women do it, because they know how to use it better. If you give them the One Ring, they'll be sure to take it to Mordor and throw into the Cave of Fire after they defeat Sauron. Frank
Don't fool yourselves. Women have always done it.
Yeah,
women have always done it. Girls have always done it. I was actually in the Ass Watchers Club in high school. So don't even think that women are that innocent. They're not. They just pretend to be. Some because they think they have to, and some because they have figured out how useful of an instrument it is to be able to pretend to be innocent. But they're not.
No, of course not. And Frank Tomeo gives us $3 Canadian and says, humanity rarely does anything in moderation. Okay, so before we get into the last story, something I just found out while we were doing the show, according to the Mail Online, I'm just going to quickly read through this. Sewing needles and carpenter nails will be banned in the UK as government cracks down on gang-related stabbings. So if you have any sewing needles or carpenter nails, according to the Mail Online, they're going to be banned in the UK. Just because if we keep on banning weapons, then maybe the violence will stop.
We've gone beyond weapons now. It's now every object that can be used as a weapon. Which, if you have enough imagination, is every object.
Honestly, I want to see the autopsy of the person who was stabbed to death with the sewing needle. That's just, I'm dying of curiosity there. Maybe they should make curiosity illegal next. But I want to see I want to see the information as to what happened that led to somebody getting stabbed to death with a sewing needle. And was it a sewing needle or a darning needle? Because those are bigger.
Yeah, I know that those are the big ones. I don't know. I just got this. This is a screenshot, so take it with a grain of salt. I just saw it somewhere. I had to share it because we were just talking about the UK banning potato peelers. So you know, if this is true, then you know, there you go. Just stay safe, UK. Stay safe.
I've actually seen potato peelers that you could stab somebody with, but if you were capable of stabbing somebody with a potato peeler, you could also stab them with a knitting needle, a crochet hook, a fork, even a spork. Stab somebody to death with a spork. They really should just ban all objects that are not spherical and that weigh more than, say, you know, 4 ounces. And that would solve the problem.
More than a human fist, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And anything that's small enough to be made into a projectile that can be fired out of a gun must be banned as well. But also anything that's large enough to smother anybody with. No more pillows, because those are dangerous. And marshmallows, too. Those have to go as well. So, yeah. I mean, they ought to really just... The UK should just start putting people in... giant bubbles of bubble wrap, and you have to wear that every time you get out of bed in the morning before you encounter any other people in the UK, and that will solve the problem. Nobody's allowed to puncture anybody else's bubble wrap to get close to their body, and that problem will be solved within a generation.
They can ban every object in the country, but it's still not going to stop people from hitting each other with their fists. I mean, there was a thing in Manchester that Doug Stanhope talked about once, and he was amazed that he saw posters in Manchester advising citizens not to beat up ambulance units emergency because there's this thing that happens in Manchester where people call out the ambulance and then just beat the shit out of the paramedics, just for no reason, just because they're bored, just because they want to beat the shit out of someone, so they call some paramedics and beat the shit out of them.
Fuck?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that happens deep in Manchester like that when you don't have anything to amuse yourself, and no amount of banning objects is going to stop people from calling up paramedics just so they can beat the shit out of them. In fact, the more weapons you ban, the more likely you make it that people will get so fucking bored that they start calling up paramedics just to beat the shit out of them. You know?
I just cannot imagine anybody not recognizing the importance of making the paramedics feel safe coming into your neighborhood.
You haven't lived with the NHS. Here we just accept that no matter what injury you get, you just walk into any local hospital and it'll all get patched up.
Yeah, unless you're a toddler.
And because they generally work for the government, they're generally seen as government workers. So there's a bit of a... I mean, most of us are sent... The vast majority of us are sensible enough to realize that you don't beat up paramedics.
The toddler that the NHS just killed by forbidding the parents to even seek medical care outside the country at their own expense made international news. He was covered on Fox and extensively, and there were a lot of people in the United States that were actually quite outraged over that story. And it's influenced some people's responses, I guess you could say, to the healthcare discussion. Because here you have a situation where people could have sought medical treatment that maybe wasn't available from the NHS, and this kid instead was starved to death under that system. I understand that a lot of people consider themselves to have automatic medical treatment over there, but that really stands out to me as a state-sanctioned murder.
Yep, I have no idea what the motives are supposed to be for it. No one's explained to me what the good reason is for keeping Alfie Evans in the country.
Honestly, looking at the story from the outside, if he had left the country, if his parents had taken him out of the country, and they had found a medical system outside the country that was better able to serve him, that would be a failure of the medical system at home. And they couldn't have that. So they killed him instead.
Yeah. Well, we should get on with the last story because we're getting close to 2 hours now. I want to read this new super chat. Zeranx gives us $5 and says the war against better homes and gardens started in the UK. All right. So now you guys know about their plans to ban carpenter nails and sewing needles, but that was just a little thing that I came across. But we also have another bit of breaking news that I would like to share. This is our last story. I thought it was too good to pass up. I found it today. A young mother posted on closed Facebook group page for mothers. I would love to hear what other mums make their hubbies for lunch and snacks throughout the workday. We are getting over sandwiches. Some feminist backlash ensued. And how dare she want to make sandwiches?
Did they suggest bento boxes there? Is that their constructive alternative to sandwiches?
I don't know. Well, let's see. No. Some others said that she was nothing but a slave and a 1950s housewife. My husband can make his own damn lunch. I make my husband the same thing he makes me. Nothing. Stuff that. Hubby is a grown man. I already do his laundry and keep his children alive. Our advice
They're his children, of course, not hers.
Yeah.
She spit them out of her vagina, but they're not her children.
No, they're not hers.
Christ.
Our advice is to stop making his lunches. My role is childcare during working hours, and that's it. He's lucky if I decide to make dinner some nights. Wow. I was married for 20 years, and my favorite packed lunch for my husband was called a get it yourself with a side order of I'm not your mother. Nope, I didn't sign up for that at the altar, but in the spirit of being helpful, pickled onion stuffed in mandarins. Ugh. Well, she got a lot of salt. Let's just put it that way. And no roast beef to put it on. Polly Dunning, a particularly rabid feminist who infamously wrote after finding out she was pregnant with the boy, "I felt sick at the thought of something male growing inside of me," she told Maddie. "You should pack him nothing for lunch. And you didn't really ask for advice. You asked what other mums pack their hubbies, which to me is slightly weird phrasing, but whatever." "I'm actually so devastated by some of these comments," wrote Maddie. She and her husband are saving up to buy their first home, and he works in an extremely physically demanding job. He does housework, he cooks dinner every second night, he gets up in the middle of the night with our bub. He is a champion. The least I can do is make him a bloody sandwich. Not a sandwich with blood in it. A bloody sandwich. You know what I mean?
Although a blood pudding does go in a sandwich.
Well, there
if
you
you
go.
put it with the right ingredients. Actually, no, it doesn't. Don't put a blood pudding in a sandwich. Don't eat blood pudding. It's awful.
It doesn't sound that great. Okay, so least I can do is make him a bloody sandwich. I love my man. He deserves to eat lunch, and we can't afford to eat out. But who needs a reciprocation in relationships when you got girl power, am I right? Maddie shared her confusion with the backlash of with many other mothers too. One mother said, "All I can say is some women really must resent their husbands by their responses. Looking after your partner is the way to a happy marriage." And another one said, "If I can help in some small part to make his day easier, I will. His hours are ridiculous, and if me doing this means he gets to hang out with our son, the more I am all for it." So, guys, if you tell women, if you ask people about making sandwiches for men, that's how you find out who the feminists are in your circle, who explodes and commences with histrionic screeching. Those are the people. So I thought that was just a crazy story that I had to end it on.
Like one of the things that mute Brian.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no.
Hold on. Where is this? Boom.
All right. One of the things that like men have always looked forward to, one of the things that's got them through their shitty jobs, even throughout the Industrial Revolution of working 16 hours a day, is they came home, opened the door to the sight and sound of people who were pleased to see them. Said, "Hey, I'm glad to see you. It's been so long. Come in here, have some food. This is great." And they generally got this from their wives and their dogs. There's another thing dogs are good for all the other stuff they're not good for. You come home and they're always pleased to see you. But it makes me glad that there isn't a dog feminist movement. Because if there was, they'd be sitting around. "No, don't lick your master's face when they come back in. They're a bastard. Just be sure to sit there and just wank to yourself, and don't jump up and make him feel good, because he doesn't feed you. He's not responsible for your." But they're probably working on this. I mean, feminists have looked at dogs and gone, "This isn't feminist enough." So that'll probably be the next breed they're going to make, the kind of breed that never greets men with a smile and an affectionate lick. Only women. In fact, you can train a dog to do that. You can train it to differentiate between white people and black people, and that's generally considered racist.
Yeah, but you can. It can be done. It can happen. We had a neighbor that trained his dog to hate my mother. Of course, it didn't work for very long because the dog came over to attack her and she fed it. Dogs are extremely disloyal when you're mean to them and somebody else is not. So the dog was grouchy with my mother 2 or 3 times, and then after a while, it got used to, this person feeds me, and the person I live with hits me with this glove that smells like her. I don't understand, but this person feeds me. Hi, person who feeds me, and so that didn't work out too well. But what this story made me think of is feminist logic. And I think I might have been the one that started the hashtag feminist logic. I might not have been. I can't remember. I've used it quite a bit. But this is more feminist logic. A woman has the right to do whatever she wants with her own body until what she's doing with her own body might benefit a man. And then all of a sudden she's a gender traitor, and shame on her, and she's womaning wrong, and how dare she, and how dare she betray other women this way. And it's her job. It's her job as a modern woman, an enlightened woman, a feminist icon, because all women are feminist icons, but none of them represent feminism, right? All women are feminist icons, and therefore all women must ensure that nothing they do ever benefits any man, because then you're a slave, even though everything men do is supposed to benefit women, or they're misogynist. But, you know, feminism is not about hating men. Feminist logic.
Even a fucking sandwich. It's not even symbolic. All we want is a fucking sandwich at this point.
Yeah, a fucking sandwich sounds kind of fun.
A sandwich for fucking. In fact, that's one of.
You need the neighbor lady to help make that sandwich.
It's one of the intrinsic properties of a sandwich. It has layers, and therefore you can squeeze something between at least two of those layers.
Don't forget the condiments, though.
Yes, otherwise you end up with pierogies.
Yeah, you don't want to take any risks.
Don't get me started on blinis.
What?
Blinis. It's like a tiny unsugared Russian pancake. It's just one of the most beautiful words in any language. Blinis.
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 I'm now trying to imagine Stalin saying blinis. I don't know if there's any way that he could make that sound scary. Except that, you know, unless he's saying you're not going to have any because I've given them to the people in the party. All right, so I have to read a couple of super chats, and then I think we can wrap it up. So go ahead, French Honey Badger from Encapistan for $5. Better have Orwellian Nightmare than showing your system to be shit in the first place. By the way, welcome to Universal Healthcare, you commies. He's talking about the story of the boy in the health system. Zeranx gives us $2 and says, all the harsh responses were Cenk Uygur approved. Probably that is true. Of course. Of course. All right. Well, if there are no final thoughts on any of the stories that we've covered, I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up and get into the after show where we will be going through this article. Can you build a nation with 100% gender equality? It is actually a quiz, and I guess we'll get like we can go through the basic thing and see if we get like a result, what we get, and if that one's too short, we can also add this story that I found out about today. That we can also read through, called STDs in LA County are skyrocketing. Officials think racism and stigma may be to blame. Remember, it was last year, I believe in October, they made it legal to knowingly give people HIV because they wanted to reduce stigma. Only in California. This was just a few months ago.
Just think of the meme. The meme with the two black guys. The black guy shoots the other black guy and then goes, "Why would white people do this?" This is that with the things replaced.
Why would stigma do this? Yeah, so we're going to be reading through that and how racism and stigma may be to blame for STDs in LA County skyrocketing. That should be fun. So if you guys want to join us in the after show, you have to become a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio and become a part of our elite female gaming clam-slamming, teabagging bunch of misogynist, woman hater He-Man Club members. And then you can watch our videos and also join us in the after shows for discussion both in and out of HBR. And you'll also get access to our Discord. So feel free to do that. French Honey Badger just says here, it's not legal to give AIDS in California. It's just demoted from a felony to a misdemeanor. That's right. It's a misdemeanor. My bad. I was wrong. It's not legal. It's a misdemeanor. It's a parking ticket. It's a moving violation now. as opposed to, well, well, whatever you might want to call it. I might say that's probably a big deal to give somebody pretty much a permanent.
It's a slap on the wrist.
Yeah,
it's a slap on the limp, AIDS-ridden wrist, is what it is.
Yes. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take us out. Thanks. I want to thank Mike and Hannah for coming on the show with me. I want to thank Max for doing the write-ups, as well as Mike J and the Stapler. And I want to thank you guys especially for coming and joining us on the show, because without you, I would be yelling into the void, and it's actually just kind of sad. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get out of here and go into the after show. And we hope to see you guys very soon on the next HBR.